Well, I guess so. There's I made the session because I know that it's an open topic, but I'm not actually that much of an expert in it. So I was hoping to have some of your expertise, Wei. So it seems at the moment we have the Gitlab CI loop, and we have a number of mostly what it does is build tests with different kinds of configurations. There's a handful of QEMU tests, but I'm not sure how extensive those are. And a lot of right now what happens is when something is pushed to staging, GitLab notices it and will run it through its gamut of tests and then report to the Zendevel or people are watching it and they notice when it starts to fail.
On a point of order there, GitLab has been failing for nearly 5 weeks, as has Travis, and no one has fixed it yet. There has not been a single pass in 5 weeks from either forms of CI. It's all to do with QEMU and submodules that's being pulled in by the rest of the build. Right. I was going to attempt to have time to fix it, and well, we see how well that has gone in practice.
Right. I think, Andy, I mean, in general, I mean, for anything you think, I think I need to find to fix this. You just need to find some way to
find someone to offload the work to.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, yeah. So the other, there's obviously that needs to be fixed kind of short term, but slightly longer term, I think that's been diagnosed, right? People understand what the problem is. It's just a question of figuring out how to fix it. So there's a couple different questions. One thing is what set of distributions we're actually using. So it seems at the moment, first of all, which distributions are being used to test the build, and second of all, how are the images being updated? So at the moment, there's a hard-coded, Fedora, say 29, I think is one of the options, but it's of course I think Fedora 32 just came out recently, so the things keep kind of aging. And a lot of the Debian ones are set to specific versions rather than saying we're testing unstable, testing and stable, and maybe old stable. It's like we're testing Jesse and Stretch and Buster or something.
So that has come up before. One of the suggestions was to have an unstable version of each of those that doesn't block the build. So the thing is that in bleeding edge distros, you also get bleeding edge compilers, and bleeding edge compilers aren't necessarily quite as good as stable compilers. It is very important for the stable trees to refer to a stable distro, but master can easily include the unstable stuff as well.
Right.
So the vague idea that was had was to keep the currently fixed stuff we've got, but also introduce explicitly bleeding edge versions and mark them as non-blocking. So we should hopefully see new build failures that turn up, but it wouldn't block a push.
Right. I mean, I think in the case of Debian, having it running against stable instead of running against a specific version, like Debian stable, would be a good option.
That's not a concept that exists in Docker, though.
I think there's some Docker image that is called Debian stable.
Yeah, Debian stable, Debian testing, and Debian unstable.
Right, but it doesn't automatically change under your feet.
Yeah, if you mean the image are not updated automatically, yes, that's right.
Well, so that's the other issue is that.
But the images are never updated automatically. I mean, we always need to update them manually. Even if we use a stable or Jesse or whatever we want to call it, we always need to update them manually.
Yeah, so that's one of the other issues is that even we've had issues where the say Jesse or Buster stopped working, but nobody notices it because the image that we have is from, a year and a half ago or something like that. So having a way to automatically update those images would be good too. Long term, there was a discussion about having it test things from off the list. I feel like way that you and or Doug got a certain amount of progress as far as understanding what would need to have that happen. And I think that we have some of the member companies have said they could potentially, if they allocate some DevOps time, to just have some people, hire some people to do that, some of their own people. But to do that, we need to have a kind of a clear description of exactly what needs to happen. So can you describe a bit more, what the status of that is, and what needs to be done?
Obviously, the first thing is that we need to be able to actually grab the patch series from the mailing list. So at the time we did the investigation, I think there were patchew and patchwork that were the potential candidate for doing that. And I think nowadays we also have the lore.kernel.org archive, which can potentially also allow us to grab a patch series of the mailing list. And then after that is just some automation system somewhere. You need to apply those patches to a Zen branch and then push the branch to we can have a special repository or special tree or special branch for that, but push the branch somewhere to GitLab. Oh, and Doug is here, so yeah. Feel free to chime in, and yeah, it can be our main repo. After the branch has been pushed, the Gitlab CI will be triggered, and it runs whatever that is encoded in the system. Doug?
Yeah, that's right. So we can make triggers on regexes of branch patterns or whatever.
So what would be the purpose of the regexes on the branch patterns?
Because you don't necessarily want to run the CI on certain branches. For example, you don't want to rerun the master branch because we already run the test suite on all the staging branches, and master branch is just a little bit behind the staging branches.
So you can have. Go ahead, Andy.
At the moment, we have staging ahead of master because of the way we commit. But if we were going to change this around to commit first, then CI, and have some CI process fast forward into master, then we essentially get rid of our staging branch. So the fact that master is not currently the thing that gets all the default testing may change with an associated change in process here.
Well, in any case, that would be easy to change. It's just a matter of configuration.
Yeah.
Right. You just change the regex, and what gets tested is then changed. Right.
Something else that's probably worth bringing up here, since the last Zen Summit where we had this conversation, newer versions of Git send email at least will now write in some mail headers describing the tree it came off and the branch it came off. So specifically to help automatic systems like this figure out where the patch series should be applied.
Right. Okay, that'd be good.
So I think at the moment you may need a bleeding edge version of Git for this, but it will soon propagate its way around.
Okay. So, I mean, do we have a clear? I mean, so I think so. This kind of a decision where we say, "Oh, we're going to use patchew, or we're going to use patchwork, or we're going to use lore." I mean, is that really the kind of thing that we can hand off to a DevOps team at some company, or is that the kind of thing an engineer, I mean, a Zen engineer needs to look at and then decide first?
I think whoever can pull this whole thing together should have the final say on which system to use, because they vary in capabilities, and there are a lot of different kinds of systems that can be fit together to achieve our purposes. You get what I mean?
Right. But I think the hope was, when Lars had kind of started this process at the end of last year, was rather than having highly trained kernel engineers like us, writing this kind of thing, to see if we can find some more DevOps level engineers that actually have experience doing testing and doing this kind of a loop and all that kind of stuff to actually step in and set the stuff up. And this was asked on the Zen advisory board, and a couple of companies have said, yeah, give us a spec of exactly what needs to happen, and we can look and see whether we can get one of our DevOps engineers to do this. So part of what I'm looking at trying to do here is to offload, not to have me or Doug or Wei or someone do the whole thing, but to have a lot of it done by DevOps engineers. So I guess, do you think having the first thing having the DevOps engineer do is compare patchew, patchwork, and lore and figure out what they want to do? Or is that something we want to do and then hand off the rest of it? Does that make sense?
I think it would make sense to let people that are planning to do the CI to choose or to assess which one is the best. Because even if we take something, they may say, no, it's not going to work for us, and we can't do what we want with it.
Okay.
In reality, the lore archive is something that already exists, already works, and okay, it's running on kernel.org infrastructure rather than our own infrastructure, but it's all Linux Foundation at the end of the day. It's certainly in a position where you could experiment with having a bot take update notifications from it and figure out what patches are new. So from that point of things, it's already one stepping stone ahead of the others.
Well, I mean, patchew is up and using Zen as well. It's just that there's
no, patchwork is, I think.
But there's also patchew is also collecting
Zen
patches.
Yeah, patchew is collecting Zen patches, but it doesn't seem to work on some. It works on get send email patches, but it doesn't work on a lot of patches. For instance, I think none of Jan's patches show up there. So
patchew's maintainer fam is also on the call, and we have. If you have any questions, we can ask Fran here.
Yeah, I'm here. So I see there are some patch series on patchew collected on the Zen list that doesn't cleanly apply to GitHub. So maybe there's some mismatch here.
So that is generally down to a mismatch between master and staging. Certainly in the past, we've had up to 6 weeks difference between them. So that might just be a case of the default branch to apply to. Also, in reality, we get people who submit against master and are told in rather unceremonious terms to rebase to a different branch. That's a problem with our process, which will hopefully go away when we start doing CI before commit rather than CI after commit.
Yeah, and another issue is that we are seeing a lot of patches against Xen code in the kernel or QEMU, and this can't apply to Xen, of course.
Yes, the part of the problem is we accumulate patch series against multiple different trees in on the Zendevel mailing list. Now, hopefully, that will be fixed by the git send email headers, because I think they identify the tree as well as the branch that it was based on. So maybe that will be a problem that gets less over time.
But
okay, so patchew will be we'll need to have this extension to recognize a git send email header.
Or at least, I mean, I think filtering on. So I think in the vast majority of cases, I mean, if it's to a different tree, then the file that it's trying to patch just won't be there. And so I think if you pull a series down and you look and like, you know, it's trying to patch a file and none of the files are there, then it's probably a different tree that you can ignore. So the other thing is that at the moment, or at least last time I checked, it's been a while since I checked FAM, is that patch series that don't have a cover letter, right? So if it just says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 without a cover letter, then patchew doesn't pick them up. And also manually created. So we have one of our developers who particularly likes to handcraft his patches. I'm not sure. I think he uses Quilt or something like that. But anyway, he sends these things out, and to a human, they look just like a normal patch series. But there's something different about them that makes patchew not pick them up. So if lore.kernel.org is already picking all those things up, then it might be easier just to use that. Or if that's something that someone wants to invest the time in making patchew do, then we can look at that too.
For such like missing functionalities, that some sensible recognition of different ways to post patches, we can easily extend patchew, and I'm willing to help if you have a description of what is missing and what can be improved. So I think it's easy. Yeah.
So I think we shouldn't be perfect, be the enemy of the good. So at the bare minimum, we should really get this thing coupled together, at least it doesn't have to be perfect. We can have a system, we can see all the patch series that are from Zendevel, and just try to apply them to staging or whatever branch that we see fit. And we just push those branches which are successful to GitLab, and then trigger the run there. If that kind of system is in place, we can actually start using it and see what is missing.
To be perfectly honest,
gradually.
Yes, I think it's entirely fine to say, for now, we will only accept git send email with a cover letter, because that's how most series are submitted already. And it's most common with the rest of the world. And there's enough other logic to get sorted out with applying it to the tree, running it, emailing back. I mean, we can easily make incremental improvements later on when we've got something that's kind of running to start with.
Yeah, it's just those series just miss a couple of headers, right? And that's mail headers. That is the things we can. I put in the shared notes, and I also put it in the public chat. But kind of the rough steps to get it done, George. Like if you were to get somebody to do it, is we need to get a patch series, get the whole series, right? Determine if it's for Zen or not, because we get patches for the kernel and QEMU. Determine the base branch of that. So that's a big thing. I mean, assume by default staging and in the future of master, but like when we are close to a release, we're we've forked off, 4.13 and stuff like that, and so we need to determine if it's against that series. And so people use different ways in the headers to decide, or not headers, but in the subject to delineate
14 or whatever. Yeah.
Right. Like some people put it in the front, some people put it at the back, but just code there for that. Right. Yes. Thank you.
In reality, a lot of that is only information for the people committing it, because in reality, what that means is put it on staging, and I would like it included in 4.14.
Actually, that's true. So even after the fork, things should typically be applied to staging first, and then backported to the fork. So.
There are very few things that don't go into staging first.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. Apply the series to a branch, push it to Git repo. And so while you have somebody work on it, obviously push it to not the main, CI workflow. Just push it somewhere, and we should be able to see those branches. And then they could have a very basic CI loop where it just, sees that it triggers and runs echo success, and that's all we would need that person to do. And once they got all that, that would be a bulk of the heavy lift. The last heavy lift would be carrying some reference for that branch to what the mailing list series was, so that we can reply to the series with the build log. Kind of Stefano was asking, like, how would we get the build log, and that would be we would be able to reply with the link to the build log, and also whether it passed or failed.
So, Ed, for anyone that's done development on the Linux mailing list, there's the Kernel Ci Bot, which will wander along and reply to your patch and include snippets of the build log or the kconfig that it broke with.
So I found it rather sporadic, because I just don't know when it would test my patch series or when it would not. So it's more of an advisory thing to me, rather than a requirement. So that
I think Kernel Ci Bot only runs on things it recognizes as a maintainer's branch. So I think it has to get into one of the next trees.
Okay. And sorry to interrupt. And before I have to leave rather soon, but I have a rather radical suggestion that maybe we should consider switching to the GitLab CI based development model, if there's an option at all. We don't have to stick with mailing lists, right? I mean, this could be a rather unpopular suggestion, but it's something to think about.
Design session later.
Okay.
Yeah, put a separate design session for that.
Okay, I really need to drop. Sorry, guys.
Thanks, Wayne.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Andy, did you say the kernel law thing already has many of our patch series that are posted on our list in its...
Let me grab a link and put it in the shared chat.
So patchew certainly has a lot of our stuff as well.
Right, so we don't...
Right, that link is for law.kernel.org, which has everything on our thing, and including 2 Git repos that contain the entire history of Zendevel ever until this public inbox thing got set up a couple of years ago. So you can literally git clone a copy of Zendevel with the full history back to forever. Well, I mean, it's
but you can't. It has all the stuff, but it doesn't. It has all the threads.
Yeah, so it's committing all the emails in. What you need to be able to do is recognize a patch from git send email separately to a human replying to an email.
What that is. That's just a mailing list archive.
I'm pretty sure that
right. Whereas patchew is something different. And patchew and patchwork are different. They're like they actually take the patches and make BCS branches out of them.
Yeah, so patchew actually applies the branch. Like you can clone you can clone something from patchew that actually has the staging with the thing applied to it, if it applies.
Right. Do we have a link to that? I mean, is there one of those running on Zendevel already? And if so, because that's half of what we've got in, in this to-do list that we've got in the shared notes.
Yeah, it's there. I posted a link.
You can exactly could do the same thing with lore. As I pointed out a bit before, there is script from the maintainers, Linux maintainers, to apply a patch based on the message ID, and it would also apply the tags. Which
yeah, but patchew is already such a script set, right?
So do you apply the tags also of the on the patch?
Yeah, the patches are applied.
Added review by and stuff like that. That'll show up.
Okay.
Okay, so here is.
So just one thing, sir. So for lore, so somebody wrote a script that's called B4 that if you pass a reference, it's supposed to apply to a Git tree, the old patch series. So you can use it like, let me copy paste how you can use it. I'm copy pasting to the public chat an example of a command line invocation of B4. This one happens to break because patch series had something not quite right. And so there is also a warning. So if you try it locally now, and that's why I know about it, because I saw the report. But yeah, just so you know.
Okay, thank you. I think patchew, though, is further advanced than that, as in I just looked at this link of George's, and right, there's actual, if you click through onto one, it says like Git fetch this thing. So
yeah, that is actually a good point. That you didn't used to have that in there to fetch the whole thing like that. But yeah, that would solve 1, 2, and 3. We just have to fetch it and push it to a place that would pick that up.
Or we could simply change the configuration of patchew to already push to where you want it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, at the moment, patchew is pushing to a tree under the patchew project on GitHub. We could easily set that up to push to a Zen project / whatever CI loop on GitLab.
Oh, right. So
that's what.
This, actually, so we could just change this to push to the GitLab loop, and then everything will work, right? Or would it?
Yes.
Correct. That would solve 1 through 5.
But we're almost done. Okay.
In which case, we presumably need to set up some kind of SSH key for patchew to be able to commit onto GitLab. Presumably, there's a way of sorting that.
Right. I mean, this patchew, right? Do we have connections to the maintainers of this? Do we need to run our own instance? How's that going to work?
No, Fam's right here.
Yeah, my name is Fam. I'm an original author of patchew, so I created when I was with Red Hat. But now, patchew is actively used by QEMU community and the mailing list, and is in the hand of Paolo Bonzini. So I think this is still very active and maintained project, and I am willing to help you with Zen.
Excellent. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't realize who you were. Well, you made an excellent thing. Thank you very much for solving our problem.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So all we have to do is create a bot account, or just a regular account on GitLab, and they just need. Them would have to create an SSH key, and we just give it push permissions. We did the same thing for we have a couple of bot accounts like that already. Me, myself, or any of the committers should have access to give that permission today.
Okay, right. So who wants to? I mean, who's going to pick up the ball here to make sure that this gets done? This is not just a lot of work. Just need someone to chase it.
Let's see what I can actually do after logging in.
I mean, I can put it on my list of things to chase, but
so one question: we presumably wouldn't want it as part of the pristine zen.git. Maybe we want to create a new repo, which is zen-ci.
Yeah. So Andy, I think the idea is that when you do if you do a push request before it's merged, then the CI loop can run. Like that's how a lot of things are done, right? So the idea.
Yes, that's how all of us work at the moment.
Yeah.
So for those of us who are members of the project, we have our own copy of zen.git that we can push branches to and get a CI status back before committing them to the staging branch. But that requires everyone committing to the staging branch to push to a separate repository first and wait for an answer.
Yeah, so we could create a separate repo for that. That'd be fine.
Yep. Give me a moment. I'm trying to do one right now.
I'm not sure, Andy, that you're quite on the same page as the rest of us, but maybe I've misunderstood you.
What's confusing?
So I envision that we would have a separate account for like patchew on GitLab, and patchew would we'd have it set up to send a PR to the main account that would trigger the CI loop, but that wouldn't necessarily be merged unless someone decided they wanted to merge it. Anyway, a lot of this stuff is stuff that we could kind of sort out maybe the details of offline.
Okay, so I think that first and foremost we need to fix the CI loops because, like I said, nothing has passed in five weeks or so. Yeah. So we need to get that working. We need to create a separate repo and give patchew push access to it. That will allow us to integrate patchew with our CI loop, and then once that is done, we need to probably have some form of email go back. And can patchew send emails, or is it done at that point?
Yes, patchew can just reply to the mailing list. This is what's already done on QEmail.
Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah. So yeah, okay, maybe patchew will need to look at the results of CI when it comes back then, but I'm guessing there's already a way of doing that.
There's an API for that, so yeah, patchew, we would probably need to modify patchew then a little bit.
Okay, so how long does
question
the pipeline run typically?
It's
north of an hour.
It can take quite a long time because we've got a bisectable build stage in it, and that actually
bisect.
Sorry. There's a build every commit thing, which is not in the first build stage; it's in the second runtime stage.
If we drop that part out, the build every commit, because hey, if your series doesn't build, it's on you to go figure out. That could speed this up.
Yeah.
Let me check how long it takes.
Most of the problem is not that the series doesn't build; it's just that the specific comics break detectability of the tree, which is something
right,
that.
Ian, okay, Ian. First of all, your volume is about half of everybody else's. You might want to turn up your little volume thing. Second of all, Ian's tried to break in twice now, so I think we should give him the floor for a second.
Okay, so I want to go back to George's question because we're running out of time in this session, and George's question was, who's going to drive this? Do we have a volunteer? Please.
I will volunteer to drive it because I would actually like to see this happen.
Okay, cool. Right, that was basically all I wanted to make sure we had nailed down.
And because Andy's quite busy, I'll put up my thing to back up and poke him and pick it up.
Thank you, George.
So, looking at the timings, most of the build stages are between 5 and 12 minutes, depending on which compiler you're using. And I think we run 5 of them in parallel. So I think it takes roughly 40-45 minutes to get an answer back in the success case. Obviously, we could try and simplify this or change it a little bit.
I'm more thinking about whether patchew can handle the length, because at the API level, it's not quite paralleled, but it can be changed, definitely. But I want to understand how the Zen CI is running. But this sounds fine. We can work on that later.
Okay, so it sounds like most of the stuff can be done without having to resort to, without necessarily asking for help. Although it might not be bad to get more expertise in the community anyway. But okay, was there anything else?
I did have a possible question about how this interacts with CI before push, if you see what I mean, or CI before committing to a non-rewinding branch. I think we should press on with this GitLab CI thing, and then rather than letting this get derailed, and then we'll do the CI before push thing after that, because otherwise there will be a confusion of concerns. And
so at the moment with this, as we've discussed, it would be nice to get to a point whereby you get an email from a bot in reply to your series if it finds something amiss, and that will fix a lot of the problems we've got to begin with at the moment. I think beyond that, we probably want to get into a position where the committers do not push to staging by default. They push to a separate branch, which the bot will either merge if it passes or not. Because, to be perfectly honest, there are enough cases when even the committers forget to do full compile tests. I'm definitely guilty of it, and I know a lot of other people are as well. So I think at that point we're now in a position where everything still goes through the same process, but the final bit of getting it onto staging is essentially forced to go through a load of build tests first.
Right. So as far as testing before pushing, I mean, I think that computers should do everything that that is boring and repetitive, and that humans are bad at. That's my thing. So I don't feel terribly bad about not having done every single possible test before I push. I mean, So, and I think we should change it. We should just change it to be, push and then test and then merge afterwards. So, is that another design session that we need to talk about how that pivot would actually look like, or?
My suggestion would be to make more progress on this one. So we have already, I think, at least in past summit, we definitely discussed this, but we don't make too much progress on this GitLab. So it would be awesome to have it actually running and properly fixed before I think we discuss a proper integration.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think we should do the get this stuff pulling off the list and testing automatically and replying and stuff like that. First and separately, like there's no dependency necessarily there. So, okay, well, thanks everyone. Time is up. We have a break now.